Harmonics, brought to you by Quantum Play Studios. I am one half of your host, Aria, and this is the lovely Rachel Z.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
We had a bit of a break last week or the last couple of weeks. Life and everything happens, but we're back with you today. So today we actually had a plan, and we're going to talk about,
Very Virgo of us.
yes,
No?
I'm so Virgo of us. We were going to continue the conversation on technology and telepathy, but this is the weekend of the equinox, and so I was inspired, and Rachel also agreed and was co-inspired.
Yes, definitely co inspired. I was like, yes, that sounds perfect.
Yeah, so today's theme and today's topic is the equinox and the eternal balance. So
Spicy.
well, we're gonna dive in, and we also are aware that it's eclipse season. So we're gonna, in our final segment, in segment 3 of today's episode, we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. But we wanted to kick things off with the beautiful energy that is equinox and the time of balance. So
Oh,
Rachel,
yes.
do you want to get us started and explain to people who may not know what the equinox is?
Well, the equinox is about like equal day and night. So equal parts night and dark, lightness and darkness. And so that time in the season uh, where we're entering Libra season, right? My hubby's a Libra, and so I feel this like poignantly, right? This idea of like, before you enter the darkness of like going into Scorpio, it's like you're splitting the chart and you're going down into that part. So it's also a time I think to always like these grand times in the cosmic calendar are times to take a moment and reflect on like where we are in the actual cosmic clock. So for when we started today's harmonics, it was like solstice season, right, Aria? So it's
Yeah,
like, so it's
me
a kind of way
too.
of us to kind of know like, okay, like solstice, and like now we're in like the fall equinox, and so that's a whole turning of the wheel. And so there's a level of looking back and like, oh wow, when even the way how we've grown since the solstice episode to this episode, and a time to reflect, to have a bit of retrospective, and also realizing the counterpoint to this is the spring equinox. And I have like almost like the pillars of my life. My husband and my sister are born around the spring and the fall equinox, so it's like having both these sides of balance around me, because unlike the solstice where the sun stands still, this is about equal dark and light. And so this level of the interplay of what that means on an individual level and how that plays out in like the grander like play of life. So what how do you feel about it,
I mean,
Aria?
that is beautiful. I actually don't know. I mean, aside from your husband, I don't know anyone who is like an equinox baby, but I know a lot of solstice babies, the summer.
Okay, interesting.
And
Wonder
so
what
to
that means.
me, this is a lot about the balance, or the approaching balance, or the dance between the masculine and feminine principles, the animated principles in every being. And again, when I'm speaking, as you know, of masculine and feminine principles, I'm talking about the energies that animate you and I and everyone else.
Yes.
Right? Like the mother and the father of creation, like not in terms of gender or sexuality, but rather
Mm,
in terms of that which animates us. And
yes.
so, like, coming from summer, where it's like busy and sunshine and all of this stuff, to this place of balance before we go into like the rest, the reflection, the hibernation, the
Mm,
deep, like the depths of winter,
deep
like
soul sessions.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But there's many different aspects of masculine and feminine. I think before we had this call, you and I were talking about how for some people it's not so much about like action and rest, but maybe it's about our time, like past and future. And you were sharing about how you had some moments with time.
Yes, my relationship with time has changed, like due to like I guess all of the cosmic craziness, right? Because like I love this meme that my hubby shared with me, which is like, what you don't believe in astrology, but you believe it's 3 p.m. Because if we think of time zones and like daylight savings time and how malleable it actually is, even though it's in like a construct, I think that like an aha moment came to me. And so as as we reflect, I look at my relationship with time when we had solstice, when like time almost stood still, and like now where, oh, I realized like time is like dependent on you. Like you are like you are by the way by which the universe is able to tell where it is in time space. So where
Can
you,
you
yeah.
explain that? How you explained it to me? You were explaining how you were attached to like 5 p.m. or like
Oh
3.
yeah, yes, for sure.
How
Yeah. So like in my head, and I'm sure that many people with like fixed placements can relate to this type of thing, where you make deadlines in your head, right? Maybe it's a Gemini thing too, actually, because it's a mental process, right? You make, I don't know.
I mean, I make them, and I'm like, that's too
Well,
brutal.
I make deadlines for like, well, I mean, like when I was a project manager, deadlines were my jam, right? Everything was like when a deliverable was due, when was this, when was a dependency for this point. So this date, this date, this date, and then all cascading down like dominoes, right? But realizing too that just because I didn't make a deadline didn't mean it didn't need to happen, you know? Like, so like I'm not, I shouldn't be trapped by these things that are supposed to be tools in order for us to do things.
Yeah,
It's a matter of realizing when you know the rules so you can break them in a way that like serves what the purpose is, right? So sometimes we get so caught up in like the rules of the game instead of like having like real like what are we even doing here,
yeah.
right?
Actually, it's funny. The things that I do adhere to time more is when it's relational. Like if you and I are like we're meeting at this time,
Yes,
like,
yes.
oh, we're meeting. Like I wouldn't mess around. Like if I have my own things, I'll be like, they will get done, and
At some point in
like
time, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You know what though? Do you think that people's viewpoint or relationship with time is a cultural thing too, as well? Because I had well, she's still like a friend of mine now, but my bestie growing up, she was Jamaican, and she would literally be like 45 minutes late for everything. And it,
island time. Yes,
yeah, and it wasn't it wasn't anything like negative. It was just more or less that she was like, oh, like it's just like the party arrives when I get there, like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Like, what's the difference? Like the party is like I'm here, right? So it like this level of more malleability with it is just I think
yeah.
prevalent in some cultures.
My parents lived in the Middle East and they're of Indian descent. And I remember, like, this is my dad tells the story, like, laughing before he even starts telling it. But it's, he worked for this company and there was a Swiss gentleman and his family. And so there was some dinner party at someone's house. Oh, sorry, no, the Swiss family was like, they were like, a dinner party. We're having a dinner party. It's at 6 p.m. So obviously, my parents showed up at 9, which is when you show up for a 6 p.m. dinner party. And this family, they had just moved to the Middle East. They didn't know that like Asians are very fluid. Like evening is just right.
Yeah,
Like
well, we'll come. Like,
there's no
yeah,
time. Like these people were in their pajamas. The children were in bed. The food was done. This was before cell phones. So they just thought we were rude and didn't show up. But we showed up like with wine and like all of the stuff at like 9:30. And they were like, it was 6. And they were like, right, but you mean 9. And they were like, no, we're Swiss. We mean 6. And it was just really funny situation. So yeah, I would say it is,
yeah.
and it's this thing, right? Like hippies, yoga teachers, like we're more fluid with time.
Well, dancer time too. If we were in
That's
dance class, yeah, that's just like, oh,
or
like you just know you're gonna start 15 minutes late because that's
yeah,
just, but
yeah,
it's not late. It's
yeah. It's on time.
it's on
It's
time.
on someone's time. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
But of course, when you're doing a performance though, and you have call time, everyone's there on time, and like all that stuff are getting ready on stage. That's like you need to be there on time. So
Yeah.
there's like as it's that dance between it, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. One of the other things, this was part of my like Virgo season reflection. I was, without changing anything, I was just trying to see, how much do I actually listen versus speak? And like, when am I
Oh.
in my, so I was actually listening to some of our episodes earlier. And you know how when someone says something and the other is like excited, and again, like, this is not like none of us, neither Rachel and I interrupt each other constantly, but it's not like offensive.
No, yeah, I know.
It's this thing. It's like something is channeling through me or channeling through my friend, a memory, a context. And I was watching and I'm like, in this moment, I actually think it would have been better if I let my friend finish or if I finished as opposed to having my own thought interrupt me.
Oh yeah,
So it was this like,
yeah.
it was this curious little, it was funny. It was this curious little activity. And I remember being like, while I was watching you and I, like I'm watching an old episode of this. And while I'm watching, it's almost like I shifted my center of gravity. Like instead of watching like this, I shifted my center of gravity back so I could actually like listen, like because
Oh.
our back is our feminine principle and our front is our masculine, our electric
Mm.
principle, right? Like magnetic, electric.
Yeah.
And so it's like when you actually move into the magnetic principle, by its nature, it's magnetic, so you can receive more. So it's like my desire to like, I must also speak and contribute. It's like I'm contributing by listening. And so I was like playing with this energetic dynamic of like front body, back body awareness when I'm listening. And it actually did change
Mm.
how and when I spoke. Like, am I speaking just because I want to hear my voice and I really want to share this? Or is it actually needed in relevance? And I bring this up because Libra's polarity, you brought up, the spring and the fall. The pole sign for Libra is Aries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Aries is like the self, the
Yes.
I am, the
Yes.
initiator.
I am here.
I'm here.
I am
And
I.
we are here. We are
Yes. Yes.
community. And it's this interesting. It's like this interesting dance, which I think we'll get into a little bit later in segment two. But um, for for anyone who's moving through equinox energies,
Yes.
it's this weekend. We're moving from Virgo into Libra in the northern hemisphere. We're moving from summer into fall.
Yes. Yes.
For our friends in the southern hemisphere. But whatever, it's almost like whatever sense of whatever we struggle with in terms of balance, and I think
Mm.
that moves us into our second segment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a lot to say. Like, what's your sense on cosmic and earthly balance there, Rachel?
Well, I do believe there is a cosmic law, right? Just from the perspective of everything from like the Fibonacci sequence to this concept of like, you don't sow your seeds in the fall, right? And you don't harvest in the spring. There's just a level of like rhythm and um, order to the cosmos. And so when we come into Libra season, I feel like there's a level of us not necessarily judging ourselves, but you just take a look, like what you were saying, like you just retrospective, because in project management, that's the biggest part that I like, actually like most of my workplaces said that I did well on was like the retrospective, like because like after you deliver the project, like all right, the next project, but take the moment, celebrate the win, right? And also look at where you could have improved, like look at what you did, right? And like like and look at it without over criticism, that which can be like a shadow side to Libra and Virgo, I think both, because it's not perfect, it's not this idealized view of what it is, but it's still beautiful, it's still like unique and wonderful in its own way, and some of those mistakes are actually probably maybe meant to be there so that we could have XYZ, right? So I think it's just taking that moment of like, sometimes it's cringy. Sometimes I look at my old videos, I'm like, oh my gosh, that extra no, like it just like, or the breathing, or like I'm doing something with like, and you're like, why am I doing that? Oh my gosh, why did no one say anything? But then you just like, you know what? It's fine. The point is that I did it. And then also like having the courage to look at yourself and being like, okay, I'm going to have a kind critique to myself and do better next time. And you're always going to do better, right? So, and then like a month from now, you're going to be even better than now. And I'm going to look back at this and be like, oh my gosh, that was so cringy too. But at the same time, it's just growth and level of realizing that judgment doesn't have to be so scary or this awful thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't, okay, judgment's not the right word, but like the approachment of just like synthesizing, like, or
yeah.
looking back into the past and like having a retrospective and an honest look at what happened or what is.
Yeah, I think this is that shadow idealism of Libra that you spoke about, right? Because what the common symbol of Libra is, I think it comes from Greek myth.
Mm-hmm.
It's I forget her name. She's a deity,
Yes.
um, Listidia or something. Anyway, she's the lady who is blindfolded with the scales, and
Lady Justice.
yes, she has a Greek sounding name. I
Yes.
forget what her name is. But it's this thing where, she's in a sense she's blindfolded because this is not an analytical judgment of this is beautiful, this is ugly, this is correct, this is wrong. It's she's blindfolded because she's sensing what feels just and like she's holding the weights, right? Like often I find the symbol of Libra is depicted without her, and it's just like the weights. But weights don't work just suspended in nothing. Like they just collapse.
Hmm.
Like you need someone to hold them up, right? And that's the the humanity of it. She's holding it up. I think she's actually, I forget what hand she's holding it, but she's holding it up kind of like this height, and the scales of justice are sort of like floating around her heart. And it's
Mm.
this thing like in Greek myth, when you die, you have this council of three.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the Greek one,
Yeah,
but
anyway, the council is less important to my point. It's more like your deeds of the world are weighed against like a feather.
yes,
And like, and the feather symbolizes something so subtle, so like so divine. And then obviously you have weight because like karmic, blah blah blah. And it's this my like it's actually a very beautiful symbol. But when we take off our blindfold and then we start like applying our mental judgment based on
mm,
past traumas, preferences, personality, then it doesn't. It's like you can follow the letter of the law,
yes.
but like, does it serve? Like, how is this serving us? And it's just
Yeah, yeah. No,
that.
you bring up a when you're bringing up the scales too. I'm also reminded of the other story of like Anubis, right? And weighing your heart against a feather, and
Yeah,
that concept that you bringing up the heart and the scales being around the heart. It's your heart that makes that judgment call, right? It's the heart that knows whether it's right or wrong, right? As opposed to like the letter of the law or like what the textbooks are saying or whatever the law like whatever that is, or it's more about in your heart of hearts if what you did was some like your heart of hearts knows when you lied, right? Your heart of hearts knows if it was for a good reason or not.
yeah. Or
And
are
if
you serving yourself or are you serving the community? Because again, Libra is about community.
yes,
So
yes.
I can be like, someone wrong did me. I'm going to take my revenge. That's great. I can be like, I'm serving. But like, is this actually making my community better? It's not. I'm in a childish pursuit of revenge, for example.
Mhm.
This is like the Punisher and like all of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
characters, right?
yeah.
Like I've always had beef with the Punisher because I'm like, you are a man child. Like,
It's
uh,
just motivations, right? And I think that
or
like there's
like,
definitely movies about that are all about that, right? Where like John Wick is literally about like you killed my dog,
yeah,
so I'm gonna freaking kill all of you. And there's like righteous justice, right? And when we feel like an action has um a reaction that is uh, worthy of it, or I don't know, like it's equal to it, I suppose.
I feel like
But
I always compare in my mind, and I know you have an opinion on this, so I'd love to hear what you think. In my mind, I think I dislike the Punisher because it's this like eternal saga of revenge versus
mm,
the Crow.
oh yes, yes,
It's like this awful thing happened, like justice is served, and then we all return, like we return to oneness, right? At the
yes,
end of the original Crow, like the Brendan Lee Crow in the 2000, 1990s,
yes.
he kills the people who are responsible for a horrific set of attacks, and then his soul releases, he returns to oneness and unity, which is, I think, the
Yeah.
part that we're often missing in these, like,
Well,
I will just be in our Punisher.
yeah, yeah, and I think it's also too like I love the crow too at the end because he reunites with Shelley, his
Yeah,
goddess, right? And so it's all for something. It's
yeah,
to set the wrong things right. And there is something about uh you can't just get away with doing heinous stuff. You
exactly.
just can't. Sorry. Like if there is ramifications for that because it's just the way things are. And whether or not people get away with it for many lifetimes,
Yeah.
hey, okay, but there's always going to be like people struggle a lot with like that idea of karma, right?
Yeah, in this life or the next, it's like, you know what? If you have a life where you are doing a lot of horrible things and karma seems to not touch you, I will see you at the next life after your Saturn retrograde. Then we'll talk if you see.
Yeah, no, it's true, 100%. No, and like it's also just speaking of retrospective, like being aware of, times in the past when you were unfair, where you played the villain, where you like, and just being like, okay, yeah, I did that.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I know.
yeah, but then also just being aware
So
of like don't over punish yourself either too, which to the
well,
punish.
it's this thing, right? Like it's like one of the basic tenets of alchemy, right? Like the law of polarity states that opposites are meant to be reconciled. And so if
Mm,
it's this thing, if I held a victim paradigm for a really long time in my life, and the thing, and like I did all the self empowerment stuff, and it was like mostly fine. The thing that actually healed me was to actually remember where I was a perpetrator, and maybe in small, not in like
mm,
massive ways, but like when I was mean to someone
mm.
in high school, in grade school, where I was unnecessarily cruel, where I made someone else a victim, right? Because like everything in like as within, so without. So
Yeah.
if I'm like the world is happening to me, it means in someone else's world, I'm happening to them. I need to
Yeah.
see it. And like the minute on a soul level, the minute that reconciled for me, it's like I didn't need to effort as a victim anymore. I was like,
It
oh,
takes work to be a victim.
yeah, it's so much work.
It
It's so much
does.
work. B, I didn't know it was so much work because it was the only way I knew how to be. But
That's yeah.
when I went opposite, and I was like, oh, like I'm actually like I'm the shitty person in someone else's life. And I was like, oh dang, this must be what it feels like. And then it just like the energy meets, and then now you can be like, oh, now who am I? Neither victim nor perpetrator.
Hmm.
So like,
I can be who I actually am.
yeah, yeah.
Fully. Fully. I love that. Oh,
So let's move on to segment
yes.
two. This is
Sounds
a
good.
fun segment for both Rachel and I.
Yay!
So we
Yay!
wanted to look at the theme of balance in comics and fantasy. And
Hmm.
so Rachel, did you want to introduce whose birthday it is in
Oh
2 days?
my gosh. Actually, it is Supergirl's birthday on Sunday, September 22nd. Happy birthday, Kara Zor-El, last daughter of Krypton. And, when I found out that Supergirl was a Virgo, I'm like, you know what? Kind of makes sense. But then I didn't realize that she was actually on the equinox, or like right before Libra comes in. And I didn't know this either, that Batgirl's birthday is actually September 23rd. Barbara
What?
Gordon. Yeah.
Oh, Gordon,
So
really?
yeah, so like it's like an interesting thing. I was like, that's
Wait,
interesting.
wait. Nightwing is March 20th, isn't he?
So yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there's a balance there, right? And so it's just interesting, right? Where you think about your sun sign, you're like, oh, okay, like what does that mean in like lived experience? And I feel like with Virgos, and especially where Virgo comes close to Libra, there is this level of like relationships, but at the same time, because of that airness of Libra, there is a level of like I'm going to like distance a bit so
Yeah.
I can observe it, right? So it's interesting. So what I feel like with Supergirl, what I've learned with her is that she actually opposes Superman because he's a Pisces. So if we think about like Krypton, the last daughter and last son of Krypton, opposing each other in the chart, where Superman like very easily takes to being like the hero of the consciousness of his planet, of like like his planet's gone, so like he is like wearing the S and like is now a hero for Earth, steps into that role very easily, whereas Supergirl struggles with it because practically speaking she has memories of all of her friends and family in Krypton who are now gone, and now she's in this new planet, literally feels like an alien. And now, am I expected to be a hero and help these people after they experimented on me and
And
don't?
she was mistreated, and she was
Yeah.
older, right?
Yes,
Like,
exactly. And she's
yeah,
older than
was
Superman, right?
busy
She's like
and
she's a big
right.
sister, big cousin kind of thing, right? And so this concept of being like, oh, and my cousin is the superhero, like how do I like step up into a mantle like that? And with people that I'm kind of like, I don't know. So she learns to love Earth, right? And she learns to love the people there. And so her choice to step into the mantle of being Supergirl is because she learns to develop loyalty and love for the planet and the people and the relationships that she has there. So,
Do you think it's
yeah.
because under the light of like Earth's sun, she gets her powers? Because I think
Yes.
you mentioned that.
Yes, that's the big thing. Like I think the big tell in Superman is that uh she like in Krypton they have a red sun called Rao, and they have a whole bunch of fun mythologies I've been looking into lately, like for Krypton. But we're not going to get into the logistics of like what their actual astro would be on Krypton if they even do astrology there, right? But she is only has her powers on Earth, empowered by the power, the radiation of our yellow sun. It's why on one of the comic books, she has to have this special suit when she goes on with Crypto to Mogo. She has to like supercharge her soup with the yellow sun radiation because she's like, I don't know if there's many other stars in this system that have yellow sun radiation.
Right,
So her
right.
powers are like very much linked to our sun.
Sun.
So there's something there to that because um, us too, I think we get empowered by the sun. Like
Mm.
plants grow in the sun. And so there's a level there too of how we synthesize the energy from the sun in a very practical way through like Virgo going into Libra.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I kind of like that, like we're going into the winter season in the northern hemisphere, so everyone's like, "Oh my God, last few days of sun, like
Yeah,
take it all
yeah,
in
yeah,
before
yeah.
the time changes, it gets darker
Yeah,
longer."
yeah, that's true. That's true. Like soak it all in, get it all like your last little juices before we go into like hibernation mode, right? And then you have all that to sit with, I guess. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's so awesome. So we're gonna move from the Supergirl universe
Yes.
to a different universe.
Yes. Yes. Because it's elemental too, right? Because if we think about even I have this periodical chart of like the alchemical table of elements,
Right?
and they basically talk about how like how each of the signs has a particular like element associated with it. So if you're going from like let's say solid to like liquid or gas to a different state, the alchemy of moving from one to another. So, for example, from Virgo to Libra is sublimation,
Yeah, yeah, which is
right?
solid to gas
Yeah, yeah.
without like
Yeah, yeah. So and I love sublimation. What a cool process, right? To go from like solid into gas. So think
yeah.
about that on like a higher symbolic level
Mhm.
of like what would
Hence
happen
matter into
matter into yeah. So yeah, so go take that and go into next airbender.
so yeah, I Avatar: Last Airbender is one of my favorite shows and cartoons. It's a Nickelodeon show. It's pretty old now, maybe 10 years old, but it's also a
Oh, it's the
comic.
best.
And the actual core of Avatar: Last Airbender is, well, there's a last airbender, and he has to master all the other elements. There's a sequel to this called The Legend of Korra. Korra is a waterbender by birth, and she is also the avatar, and she is to master the other elements, but there's only one airbender teacher in her universe, and she has a very hard time with air. So she
Ah,
has to go through, so she's actually very good at her element, which is water, fire, and earth, and she struggles with air. Like she is
okay.
rigid and inflexible in surprising ways, but she's a
Hmm.
waterbender, so she's also very flowy.
Yeah.
The last chapter in The Legend of Korra is called Balance.
Hmm.
And everything that leads up to it is she, there's a lot of weight on her shoulders. Um, she's the avatar after Avatar Last Airbender.
Mm.
She's basically the second avatar in a long gap. And there's a massive weight. It's like the modern world.
Yeah.
And so she's not trying to prove herself, but she's a teenager, so she has all these emotions, and she really tries to fix everything wrong with the world that is much larger than her because the avatar is the savior. And she almost dies at the end of book 3. So when book 4 starts, which is about balance, she is withdrawn, she is terrified, she can't access any of her gifts, she is panicked, and it's a very different take. The whole
Yeah.
mood of that book is different. But the thing is, she is coming into a much deeper wisdom of facing all her fears, living out her worst nightmares, which is in her case the inability to help the world or save the people
Yeah.
she loves, to fail constantly and to be criticized in every direction from every person, and then come to balance with all of that and balance
Mm.
herself and other.
So at that point, does she master air?
She does master it.
Yes. Love that.
Does master it.
Yeah, I love that because it's like that's all like the trials of everything, right?
Yeah,
As
and it's weird. Like I love the Airbender series, including Legend of Korra, because especially in the Avatar Last Airbender, the mastery of an element is linked to your emotions and many aspects of your personality. So Earthbenders are like sturdy and rigid, and their personalities are often like that. Waterbenders are always concerned with healing, and they work with like water and ice and all of this stuff, and airbenders want to be, they're like, they have a great sense of humor and they're witty, and like, the firebenders are like evil in Avatar Last Airbender for the most part. There's obviously good ones, but like they're coming to hold a massively destructive power. So like, the tendency towards excess is large,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and then in Legend of Korra, you some of these elemental structures kind of relax a little bit because everyone is kind of shared and like people live together, and she has to sort out balance, and she actually ends up softening and actually coming more into her feminine side in the
Okay.
at the end of balance, because she is more of her, I must always, hold up the world on my shoulders.
Yeah.
She relaxes, she asks for help, she's able to trust her friends, she's able, right, like all of these aspects of collaboration, which is also the spirit of Libra. So that to me, and all the emotions that go with that is a very powerful, it's just very powerful and fun, especially if you have kids and like you want to teach them the stuff.
Yeah, no, it's you know what? I do think like in children's shows there are like beautiful nuggets of wisdom, right? There was like a Neil Gaiman quote I saw where it was like through the fiction, like kids know that, even though you're talking about fantastical worlds and these are just made up characters, that there's intrinsic truth in the stories. And so Last Airbender, there's many myths like that are like also speak to that too. And so as
Yeah.
you know, as you've as you're nourished and have those stories come through you, you also get this other level of intel in terms of like how the greater universe works. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, the microcosm and the macrocosm. Yeah, exactly. So actually, this brings me to a really great question. And towards the end of
Ta-da!
season two, how what type of what are the two things that you're balancing in your life, Rachel, right now?
Well, oh my gosh, the two things I'm balancing. I remember I was like, when I told you something, I don't know what's going to actually happen when we actually go live and I actually
You
answer
actually
this
have a
question.
lot of answers.
Yes, and I actually answered this question. Balancing, you know what it is? It's because like coming from, I was actually telling this to people on my live lately too as well, because I've had a hard time with like, like my project manager work self, my work persona, right? Like working at KPMG, working at like the agency, working at the hospital, like that work persona is very 9 to 5 meetings at 10 a.m. You have like you're very much set into this particular schedule. And I've also then realized that now that I'm not necessarily in that anymore, that I was still already, I was in like a mind trap of that, a construct of that, just because of repeating it over and over again for years. And so now that I'm in a more creative mindset or frame of how I'm producing work, I was doing the same things to myself, but then it's the dance of the two, because creatives too, all creatives need to have set boundaries too. Otherwise, nothing's going to get done. Like you'll be in the creative process forever. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be good enough. And myself and Kevin, like my hubby being a Libra, we've had to work on this because with Golden Sugar, like I've like we want to like have it like amp up the shows, have more live streaming, like have like it be like an actual like TV network. And so that's a lot more of a practical aspect, even though there's a lot of fun creativity involved when you're like making new shows and like creation of all those kinds of segments and like skits you can do and things like that. So that's very like, left brain stuff, but at the same time like it needs boundaries. And so it's just been hard to kind of, and Kevin does this thing where like it needs to be absolutely perfect, and he's a DJ too, so it's like the sound has to be like impeccable, so the sound checks in the beginning take forever, and but at the same time all of that workflow becomes easier the more you do it and with practice. And so it's just that the balance between like all of like the stuff that seems like, oh, that's so boring, and like I have to show up to a meeting, and then it being like, yeah, but this meeting is fun and it
Yeah,
serves a bigger, more fun purpose.
I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what came out. It's kind of a blend, I think, of what we talked about prior to the call. And how about yourself, Aria? How would you, any advice on how our cosmic friends can deal with, balancing?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll answer the first part of the question.
Yeah.
So, the thing I'm balancing in my life is actually the Aries Libra pole. So, I had the gift and the blessing to be in Mount Shasta last weekend, and that sort of like kicked off my eclipseness. Sorry, my the eclipse season and the equinox for me. So Mount Shasta is in California. It is an energetic vortex. It's considered the root of the earth, so the root chakra.
Mm.
And one of the things that, and I didn't expect this, but one of the things while I was there, I was with 24 other priestesses.
Oh, fun.
We
Very
were
powerful. Very
yeah,
powerful.
it's very
Yes.
it was sacred, it was beautiful, it was shattering and ripping and illuminating at the same time. But one of the things I realized, and we like I live by myself in my Toronto apartment, independent woman, all of the stuff. And then I go to this retreat and I'm staying in this like round yurt with three other women and we're like sleeping together and there's compost toilets. And the first day I heard all of my little like the coffee isn't hot. Oh, I don't actually have as much space. I don't have space to stretch. All of this. I tell you, within 10 hours before that first day ended, all of my little judgments and natterings just sort of like fizzled away.
Oh, nice. I love that.
I got to learn, I actually got to see, like, it's almost like, you look into this alchemical, like, mirror on the wall, you look into
Yeah.
this alchemical mirror. And I saw that that entire narrative, that dialogue came from a version of myself that inherently believed I was separate. I was
Mm.
so interested in building my individuation, like, right, and I am like I'm this, but like my I am was my personality. Like I am
Yeah.
woman, I am priestess, I am alchemist, I am doing a TikTok live. And because, and like, not that that's a bad thing,
No,
it's
it,
just that's where I was. And so I inherently lived and enacted the separation program in a very subtle way. And because Mount Shasta is anything but subtle,
mm.
see it, held in like the womb of the mother, in the womb of this like volcanic space. And this was my mentality. So by the second day, I was like, this coffee is cold. Oh, I don't have a lot of space. And like I was literally, my face was smiling while I was saying my judgmental things because it was so funny to me. And it
Yeah.
was, I think, the first time in this life where I got to experience myself as part of the fabric, as part of the we are, that relational medicine of Libra. I am because you are because I am, we are. And so that has been, and like Mount Shasta is amazing, but now I've come back to my life here, back in Toronto, and now I'm like, part of me, so now I just do this little back and
Well,
forth.
part of you will always be there too, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
sorry, I meant the back and forth between like,
Oh, yes.
well, oh no, I'm part of something, right? Until I'm more comfortable in building this new muscle. So that's
Mm.
part of what I'm balancing in my life, like balancing the knowing of self as the individual and the knowing of self as the collective, because really both are true.
It's funny. I hear the Toronto traffic behind you, and like sometimes, like when I do my Gotham readings as Batgirl, it's like, oh, we hear Gotham. I'm like, yeah, it's Gotham. Um, we're in Gotham, but you bring up a great point about you know, going out into the wilderness. I had a few people actually on my TikTok live who went on a ceremony at Thunder Mountain along with the Aurora Borealis during the eclipse season. And so just this level of tapping into the Earth's energy systems, the ley lines of the Earth, how we mirror the Earth, that you're saying like the the root chakra, but the earth also has, a solar plexus and a crown chakra and all the ley lines that exist and all of this, like it's all there for us, and we all inherently, I think, feel it as we are, we're all our own little planets, and depending on where we are, we're going to be like charged up, and like things are going to come up and stories are going to come up based on like where you like activate like a lock and key into certain
Yeah,
places, right? And
yeah.
so yeah, it's so I feel like that balance that you're talking about, Kevin likes to talk about it as like a little bit of hide and go seek with yourself almost, where like I'm playing hide and seek of like I'm the creator, but I'm also an actor on the stage. Like,
Right.
like, or like how I say, like, you're writing a script and I'm writing a play, it's one thing to like know what's going to happen and then be an actor in it and be in it and then not know what's going to happen next. But you on a higher level do know what's going to happen next because you wrote it.
Yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
no, I
yeah,
totally get
yeah,
that.
like popping in and out of that. But I love that whole idea of just connection though, and that's what Libra season and equinox I feel like is in that balance of the light and dark where we,
Yeah.
yeah, we find
Yeah, no,
ourselves.
I love that too. So let's actually take this on to segment three.
Okay.
So it is also eclipse season.
Yes.
And so Rachel, so both Rachel and I are astrologers, but Rachel, I want to kick this off with you because of all of the Aries Libra energy in your life. And I feel like you know these signs really well. When the eclipses are in Gemini Sag, I'll kick it off.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah, that opposition. Yeah, and you can find power between like the opposite signs. I feel like that's something people should realize too, even in your own sun sign, to like look at the opposing sign, just like to see some intel as
the
well.
balance too, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, I've been married to a Libra for 10 years now. And so, marriage, that's like Libra's domain. And,
Yes, union.
yeah, and union. And I got married on basically my Saturn return. And my Saturn sits in Scorpio, kind of close to Libra. So, uh, for me, learning how to be in a relationship as someone who had like I'm independent. I do my own thing. I moved to Toronto all by myself. I don't need any help from anyone. And but at the same time, I've had to work a lot on with my hubby to just like he's been told me he's like you have to tell me when you need me, right? Because
Mhm.
I can't like I do my best to like read your signals and stuff, but like I don't know. So and I was just have been realized I'm like yeah, and I haven't been great at communicating that because I have been ingrained with this assumption that like on some level like you should just know. Don't you know me? If you love me, wouldn't you just know? That kind of thing. And so
I
this like
expect telepathy.
yeah, so this like weird catch 22 in it is like well how is he ever supposed to learn that about you if you don't like let him in on that, right? And so it's also just a level of I came off of birth control and like as a result like I feel like I've just been so much more emotional coming into like my cycles and like having to like navigate that with
10 years of emotions. Yeah.
yeah like like when I used to just compete in bodybuilding competitions I just didn't get my period. I just like was so disconnected from that, and now that I'm so much more it's just a level of also realizing that sometimes those of us who are very empathetic, you're probably included in this area where you just feel like you just get everybody's emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like sifting through sometimes like as you're saying to your point of being like I'm an individual like and like
Yeah.
realizing I'm part also the all, but also like you don't need to also take on
Yeah. And
all of
yeah.
this the trauma sometimes of everyone is going through.
Yeah. And so I'd love to actually take this chance to say like, so this is eclipse season. It kicked off a couple of days ago with the lunar eclipse in Virgo.
Yes.
And technically by date 2 weeks after, which is October 2nd, is the solar eclipse in Libra. So
Mm,
we are currently in what is an eclipse tunnel, and this
mm.
everything Rachel, you just said about feeling other people's energies, like it can feel and it is absolutely feeling very heightened
Yes.
when
Potent,
the
like
eclipse is in.
energetic. Yeah.
I actually liken it to like if you've ever had to like repot a plant and you just like be the plant for a second, like you're just minding your own business, you're in a pot, you're in a tiny pot, everything's cozy, and then these hands come in and they like shake you and they're like pulling stuff, and now you're being ripped out of your cozy home that you've been in forever, and now you get dumped into a new pot, and then you have fresh new soil, and you're like, who is this? And then
I
you
love that. Now I love that metaphor.
like so I like I'm also a herbalist and I do work with plants a lot, and I really try and be gentle when I'm repotting them. But when I have like 11 to repot, I'm just like, all right, like like I'll tune to them. But it is like if there's certain plants when you repot them, they droop for a few days because
Yeah.
they're
They have to recover for a bit. Yeah. Yeah.
they just need a couple of days to recover, right? So like this is all of us, like like the hands of God or the hands of the universe are like
Yeah.
us, right? So we're like, whoa. And some of us who, have support and love and space and have been over like the last 10, 20 years refining our ability, this hits us really hard as well. And this is like not our first rodeo. For
No.
a lot of people, this is their first rodeo.
Yes, and it
you know
can
and
feel like crazy.
crazy. It's so crazy. Like both you and I have been there like many, many times. Um, and so I wanted to ask, like, how with people who maybe you talked about, like, detachment or withdrawnness with Libra energy, like the
Mm.
avoidance or like the intensity and the overwhelm. Um, from an astrological or an energetic or an emotional relationship, husband and wife perspective, what would you say, like what words would you offer our audience who are live listening now or listening to the recording to like help with this repotting?
How I love that story. I love that analogy so much, Arzi, because
I
and
just
no,
knew all
yeah, because it's like you're it's going to be good for you, right? In the end, like the plant, like Kevin did that with one of my cosmos. Like we had plants on the balcony. I grew green beans and carrots and sunflowers, and it was great. And I grew them all from seedlings for the
yeah.
first time, right? And so of course, like you have to transplant them because they grow, and as they get too big for their pot, their roots need room to stretch. So like sometimes you need to repot or they will die.
Yeah.
And even though, as you said, like you're cozy and they seem fine, like he would be like, we need to repot that. I'm like, oh, do we really have to? I'm like, I really like this pot. It's really
Yeah.
cute, right? The pot's really cute, right? It's like it's
Yeah.
designed nice, and I'm like, oh, the bigger pot's not as cute. It's ugly. And he's like, but they need more room to grow. And I'm like, fine. So like it happens, but of course, as you said, like in the first day or two after, they're like they're kind of like sad looking. They kind of like look at you like, what did you do? And I'm like, what did I do? Like, what did we do? What did we? And then they sprout up, and then they have so much more flowers, so much more life than they ever did in that smaller pot. But
Yeah.
you have to just go through that for a little bit to find your footing, find your roots again, and then like go for it. So like I love that story so much. And from a relationship standpoint, I think the point is to realize that your relationship does grow. That the initial things that held that spark in the beginning are still there, but that it changes, but it still keeps the initial, like every flower is still that seed that it once was, right? So to remember that, and even though like you're this big bush now and you have all this stuff, and like we've been together for like a while now, like we've been married for 10 years, but like we've been together since like I first moved to Toronto, really. And so
15 years
we've
almost.
both changed, but we've changed like together too, right? And uh the woman that I am now loves the man that he is now too. But when I first met him, I could see the man he was going to be as well too. So I think there's just a level of, in everybody's relationship, like you only know what is going to jive best with you, like your sense of humor or like your weird taste in movies or all this other stuff that comes out. It's all like so unique to every relationship, and I think it's important to Libra is so concerned also with like the others. It's also like the appearance of what your relationship is to others. And at the end of the day, too, it really doesn't matter but the two of you. And so whenever girls, like my girlfriends, ask me for relationship advice, yourself included, if that ever happens, it's always just like at the end of the day, it's you. Like, what are you happy in it? It's really not about like what other people think like a man should be doing in a relationship, or what the roles are between wife and husband or whatever those are. It's you make those rules in your own relationship, so long as you have the space for that other individual to be able to grow into it as well too. So that's my advice.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's this thing, right? Like, oftentimes during big energetic intensities, we often take out all our
Oh,
frustration.
I do, and I've been trying to do a lot better, and about just because he brought up the other day, he's like, I have to tell you now, since you've been off the birth control, before you like have your period, you're just really intense. I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
know, I feel it. But I'm like, but if you told me that while I was going through that moment, I would have freaked out at you and be like, what do you mean?
You know what? Okay, I liken. I know sometimes guys have a hard time with this. So I will liken it to this example. If someone is having a panic attack and they can't breathe, you're not going to get in their face and yell at them, "You're having a panic attack," right? That would be the opposite of help. So your consciousness is like, this person cannot breathe, even though it's something you don't even have to teach a baby. But for some reason, something has death gripped this person.
Yeah,
So
that's a great way to
you
put it.
can get, so what you get in behind them, you help, you breathe deeply so that they can match the movement of your lungs, or you calm, or you say calming things to them, or you get them to whistle, you get them to, right, so that they can slow their
Yeah,
breathing.
deregulate themselves down. Yeah, instead of like amping up that energy and being like,
Right.
no, yeah.
So that would be the equivalent of someone like, like it just about to have their cycle not flowing, about to having all the stuff, and then someone being like, "Oh, you're on the rag, are you PMSing?" Like, of course I'm gonna rip your head off and feast on whatever is there, you know like but like of course I'm gonna do that.
Yes.
That's the thing, right? Like, it's a
Yes.
relationship with the feminine, and like when we, like, I think of this often, like, obviously it's easier for you and I, we're in female bodies, to perhaps relate to our cycles, perhaps relate to the feminine, and then for us maybe it's more work to relate to the masculine aspect, and like the same goes for, for the other side of things. But like, as adults, and as people of consciousness,
Hmm.
we hold both. And so attuning to one and enacting it, like, again, it's balance, it's a dance, it's a back and forth. And
Yeah.
so just to do the thing that you did when you were like 15, just because that's how you treated your 15-year-old girlfriend, like, it's not the same, or boyfriend, whatever. And I think the same applies to women, having the expectation that, my boyfriend is going to be this Prince Charming. It's like, no, he's going to be the man he is.
Yes, that's
There's
true.
potential.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and like, I get really caught up in these, like, what could it be, fantastical traps, and I then forget to honor the man that's in front of me,
Yeah,
and right, like the human that's in front of me, not the potential, but the actual person, like,
that's true. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
each of us have that, like, we all have our little balance.
That's so true. I think there's also a level of like we're not here to like fix guys either, men,
Yeah.
and they're not here to like I don't
They
know, like
rescue us.
rescue us or save us or anything. It's really supposed to be a bit like partnership. It's supposed to be fun. It's yeah, 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 equinox, and like and what that looks like in each relationship is different too,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, and to me, that's sort of, like the end part of this theme. It's like equinox and the eternal balance. It's the sense that balance is not a status.
no,
It's not
yeah,
like, I am
exactly,
well balanced, done. Now you can just roll over and die, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that. Like, to me, I think that's why, like, I like the scales of Libra as the symbol, but I much prefer like the yin yang, right? Like, because
mm,
that is a moving, living image. Like, we see it in two dimension drawn, like the black, the white with the dots of the opposite, but it's not actually a static image. It is living, it is moving, right? Like,
mm,
while I'm speaking to you, I'm in my masculine, you're listening, you're in your feminine, and then when you speak, we flip. We don't, like, make an agreement on, like, we don't make like a written agreement, like, you will always listen to me. It's like, no, like we do. And I think this is also my awareness from what I shared, right? When I am in a separation paradigm,
mm,
it then becomes really important for you to listen to me and you to validate me, because my me needs to feel seen in the world.
yes,
When I come from we are, I am part of the larger fabric, I'm part of the one mind, the greater all, then I'll listen. Then I don't know, there's just more trust, there's more space. And one of my practices is actually it's this old yoga practice. It's to do this alternative nostril breathing, which is
okay, yeah,
a big practice of inhaling through one nostril, exhaling through the here, and then inhaling through this nostril and exhaling through here. You can Google alternative nostril breathing. And to me, I do it every morning and every night. And it's a practice of balancing my hemispheres.
mm,
And after I finish, I do like 20, 21 to 40, 20 to 40 rounds of it. And then I, like, move my consciousness to the back of my body, my feminine polarity, and I'm like, now what do I need? Do I need rest? Do I need work? Do I need to finish my project? And then my masculine principle can enact and serve my feminine.
I love that. I love that you bring up the whole like masculine, feminine, how you would kind of classify the front and back of your body because I was talking to actually my friend Laura, who's in the Dragon Warriors, because
Oh
she was
yeah.
messaging me about. She's like, "Do you remember Brad, the boyfriend that we manifested when like we were 14 and we didn't have it?" And like she sent me a picture of her boyfriend right now, and he literally looks like the guy that we like. It just she's like, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, yeah, but she is a Libra. She was born October 1st. She's left-handed. My husband is a Libra who's also left-handed.
Oh,
Weird, right?
that is weird.
But I wanted to bring up left-handedness actually because left-handedness, like I talked to Kev about like being left-handed, like playing a guitar is not the same, but there are no left-handed guitars. There's only one kind. As well as like if you look at a fridge is not a left-handed fridge. You have to like literally be in a different frame of mind. You're a left-handed person living in
I've
a.
never. Next time I'm at your house, I'm gonna watch how Kevin opens the fridge.
It's just, or if you're writing with a left hand, you're smudging everything as you're like writing, right? Because your notebooks aren't right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm like, wow, never thought about that. And like, it's just like the different sides of your body, right? Your left side is supposed to be feminine as well, and your right side is supposed to be masculine to some degree, right? And like, there's these currents that are in your body and interfacing with each other, and how like I've just tried to like write more with my left hand too as well, or even in dance like you will favor a side. And so practices of like using your weaker side even in personal training or weightlifting, like
Yeah.
starting with your weaker side first just to give it the attention because we'll
Yes. Yes.
we're used to a certain pattern of doing things, but then we'll overuse one side or one way of pattern of doing things. So I think that equinox season is a good time to kind of like reflect with where we're overworking and
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
bring it to balance.
One other place I use is, I mean, like I'm feeling pretty great now, but like, there are certain times where like your shoulder will hurt or your wrist will hurt, like or you have like some body thing, physical ailment that happens. And I will often be like, okay, which side? Because if it's my left wrist versus my right wrist, it's almost the difference between am I do I have to let things go or am I avoiding something that I actually need to bring in?
Ooh,
So it's
the
almost
nuance of what that is. Yeah.
yeah, from like a health perspective, right? So my neighbor has like he's getting these repetitive styes in his eye, in one of his eyes,
In one eye, yeah.
right? And it's
Interesting.
like, like left eye versus right, um, left or front versus back, top versus bottom. And again, like this is not like a philosophy that's set in stone, but like when I'm moving energy in someone's body or in my own, or where I'm looking at what the actual emotive and spiritual or ancestral reason there is to an ailment that is manifested, I will look at like, is this like from your dad's side? Is it from your mom's side? Not genetically, but energetically. Where are you pulling this from? What are you holding?
Yeah,
What am
no,
I holding?
I vibe with that. Yeah,
Right?
that's
And so there's actually a lot, and all this to say, we are three-dimensional. We're currently incarnated as three-dimensional beings. We understand polarity. So to understand masculine, we need feminine, and the other way around. Both these are true, and there is like the oneness aspect, oneness consciousness that is a little bit elevated for us average humans to like know and figure out, right? Otherwise we would all have achieved salvation. So we utilize these energetic principles, these principles of creation, to understand our place, our humanness, our divineness, all of this stuff, so that we can be one, right? Like this is not a like, by no means is this like a philosophy and your left side is your feminine, like I don't mean it that way. I just mean it as, if it helps you, you can ask yourself and this how you can come to balance or favoring a weaker side to strengthen that weaker side.
yeah. It's all models, right? That's why like people get very caught up in like the models of things, how things are called, the names of things. So I'm like, whoa. Like, what are we actually talking about here when we're saying masculine or feminine? Because think about it. If you had like masculine, feminine, like because I've been working with a lot of wires and production and stuff. So if like when I'm trying to figure out you can't plug a masculine into a masculine. You need it. It just it won't work. You won't have the connection. There won't be a connection. So you just it's just what is. It's not one way or another. It's just, and in recognizing that and acknowledging that, there's so much peace that can happen.
There is, and like
Like,
I think in our world there is it's what you spoke about earlier. It's attaching so much to the letter of something technical, whereas if I'm using a battery, it's going to have a positive and negative pole.
yeah, yeah.
Batteries don't have two positive or two negative poles. And again, these are aspects of creation, right? Like to create a project, you probably need to sleep at night to get some rest. You probably need to have an inspired idea. Those are feminine. And then you enact it. That's masculine,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes,
Like,
yes,
so,
100%. You need
right?
both. You just need both.
And we are both. We're
Yeah.
actually all hermaphrodites here. Like, there, done. Like I said, a weird thing. Right? Because we have both energies. Everyone's a battery, everyone has a positive and negative pole. And so when the notion of coming to balance is to see like, what can I strengthen with tenderness? I really think, especially there, I like masculine, feminine because you think of discordance or whatever. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. But like for me, my masculine and feminine internally come into marriage, come into harmony much more when there's tenderness, when there's understanding, when it's like my masculine is exhausted, overworked, unappreciated, and feels inadequate. And my feminine is just a rage monster right now. And I will sit in this and light a candle for each of them and do some alternative nostril breathing and ask my guides for help. And they will fit. I trust Earth and galactic, universal wisdom so much. So for me, things like nostril breathing and like reminds me of how much I trust, and something in me lets go, and then balance just comes. I literally do nothing but get out of the way.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
some people, it may not be nostril breathing, it may be a meditative practice, it may be boxing, like getting your excess energy out and then coming to stillness and sitting. So I wanted to, both for Rachel and I wanted to share some of the practices because
Yeah.
we're having a great time this eclipse.
Yeah. Like, I mean, like, it's with relationships too. Like, I think it's important to have these personal practices so that you don't have your emotions hurt other people.
And control you.
That too. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And it's, you end up like hurting yourself by hurting other people too, by like in that sense as well, right? Because like in the times where like I've blown up and like Kevin's the closest person, and so that's just what happens. And it's not, I'm not mad at him, I'm just upset
Yeah.
in general. And so, but unfortunately, like those who love you will, he thinks I'm mad at him, even though I'm not necessarily mad at him. So I've had to like learn to be like, oh, I need to extra communicate what, like, that I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the stupid technology, at the stupid thing that dropped, and I spent all this time and it didn't save, blah blah blah. Like, it's that I'm mad at. And although I'm like going through that, just to be like also communicate that, because I do feel like individuals like Libras, like he's like, oh, it's me, I'm the reason why you're feeling upset.
This is
Like,
their sign
right?
thing.
Yeah, it's me. It's clearly me. I'm like, it's not you. It's like, but then why are you acting like?
No other sign thinks that.
I no other sign does. Literally, just like it must. Out of all things, I'm like, out of all possibilities that you I know you're thinking of, it's not that. I tell you that.
I know. I love this thing you said, because we talked a little bit about like justice and things like that, and owning our anger, our frustration, our rage, whether it's personal or whether it's an aspect of the collective, um, that um, that was actually most of my Virgo season was like navigating
working with it.
in a way that I actually learned to practice sacred rage, like have it rise, have it channel, have it kind of do the volcano explosion by myself in like in the bath or something like that, and then let it go, and then keep so that it doesn't come out in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's like, oh, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think a lot of women especially really struggle with this. We're so good at holding and holding and
or like
holding.
you're just like, I don't deserve to feel upset. or I shouldn't
or
feel
that,
mad
or
right
should
now. I
you're like,
shouldn't. I
right,
So
yeah,
I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I'm not. I'm fine. I'm totally fine. It's just,
yeah.
and then it
Meanwhile,
just,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Meanwhile, you're like, you're like a volcano about to erupt,
yeah.
and then like something happens, someone says like that one comment, and then you fully explode. But like, again, I think because I was at a volcano at Mount Shasta, I was like, right, like there are ways volcanoes vent, right? Like
Mm,
not every volcano erupts constantly. Like Shasta hasn't erupted in like hundreds of
mm.
years, right? So like, so
That's a good point.
there are ways and mechanisms, but repressing it, denying it, these will cause a lot of problems. So if that's your tendency, good luck. Not the time to be avoiding.
Yeah, no, it's like whether it's breathing or dance or lifting weights or boxing or however you want to choose to alchemize whatever emotions you have, acknowledge it, right? Acknowledge the fact that you're like that it pissed you off that this happened. Like there is worthy like justified rage in some things, right? If someone like for example, like I was the type of kid who like if you like hurt my friend, I'd hurt you. Like just like don't hurt her. The heck. But like not that that's justified all the time, but at the same time like there's something to be said about like there are those of us who are called to protect
Yeah.
others and there is justification in your rage for the injustice that's been done to those that you love and are like our friends and family and those that are things that are sacred. They deserve to have that adequate like level of feeling for it, and then we just need to be aware of like how we direct things,
Yeah,
right?
actually, and I think part of my struggle was with a lot of conscious spirituality communities. Everyone's like, you must forgive, love and light. And like, this is the interesting thing.
Mm.
If you repress your anger and try and like cover it with a veneer of like forgiveness, you're functioning from the personality. It'll work for a few weeks. Probably not during eclipse season, but it'll otherwise work for a few weeks. And then the whole thing will erupt. But after
Yeah.
having acknowledged the depths of your rage, and like for some of us carry ancestral rage or cultural rage or things from other lives and just other experiences, right? Like once you allow that to come, and it might take a few days or it might take a few weeks, the peace and the natural effortless forgiveness is immovable. And I can tell you that with absolute surety because I'm speaking from that place today. And I was not in this place a few weeks ago. And it's this thing, right? Like, I remember I had this ex who was really trying to forgive people in his life and he kept trying. And
Mm.
I remember being like, why is this so hard for you? But like, I didn't, he had a whole like thing going on. But I think more recently, I realized why he was struggling. He was struggling because he would get angry and try and forgive, but he would forget
Oh,
expressing the true rage and injustice that he felt.
yes.
And now that in certain aspects of my life, now that I have actually like seen all of the grime and the volcanic ash of it, forgiveness is effortless.
Mm.
It's like a choice, and I'm like, right, and now I can compost this like volcanic stuff
Mm.
and things can grow of it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's very
Yeah.
nutritious.
Yeah.
Well,
Forgiveness is a beautiful thing, but as it needs to be earned though.
it needs to be earned, and like
Yeah.
you have like it's work for the one forgiving. Like I can be like, oh yeah, yeah, I forgive you, and it's personality, I don't really mean it, or
Mm.
I'm gonna 100% bring it up in 2 weeks, right? Like when you annoy me for something else, but actual like this triggered me. I am like all of the rage, la la la, go your full cycle. And this to me is the balance of Libra. It's that like there is such um if you move through if you actually treat rage as sacred,
Mm.
like that is the holy balance, that is the eternal balance, right? Like the opposite of anger is lightness, is bliss. And so like the depth of one is the depth of the other because it's a
Yeah.
rhythmic relationship.
Yeah, that's totally true. I feel like oh my gosh, so much there with like the sacred rage thing.
Temple
It's
of Isis was very.
yeah, yeah. And
I got all of this there.
it's crazy too though because in being in a relationship with somebody like with my husband, it's been a lot of like you see how you are in another person's eyes as well, right? And at the same time like like sometimes like we've learned to communicate better about things like how I'll say like I know you didn't mean to like come off that way, but it felt really condescending when you did this, or like me when I go off about things, it just feel like it's like I didn't realize I'm that scary. I guess I guess I am. And a lot of like people told me like I'm scary because of the shifts, because I'm usually so like happy and like whichever, and so like when I just get upset, it's just a big shift in it, and so
Like,
okay, yeah.
you guys have told me I'm terrifying, and I'm like, what? I'm so happy and
Well, it's not. I think it's intensity, right? And I think that it's also just a level of like those who can like it's Benny Gesserit stuff, right? Where if you can wield yourself, it's intimidating, and so men on their end, if they're not right with their own feminine self,
yeah,
their feminine self is going to get super threatened by a very like
yeah,
embodied woman. That's what I've realized as well.
yeah. No,
So
that's
you know, I did.
yeah.
Did we cover everything
We
today?
covered everything. We are all present in and done. This was a little bit longer than
It
I.
was long. Well, I mean, I guess like eclipse, super moon, like we're moving into Libra season, the equinox. There's like a lot going on cosmologically, right? And so like,
There's a Saturn and Jupiter
oh,
something to.
the,
There's a very intense transit, right? Like expansion and
yeah,
contraction, which is also balance. So really, we're all getting repotted.
I love that. I love that so much. Uh,
Yeah,
it's
having
the
a marriage.
change, right? It's all just the change, and change is just like scary, but at the same time, like if think about like a surprise birthday party, right? Let's think of that. Like, we're so used to anticipating like bad surprises. Like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh, the other shoe's gonna drop, instead of it being like, maybe this is just a big party, and like that's what's coming around the bend, right? And it actually is.
and for people where that's so outside your realm of possibility, I would say if you're so nervous about like surprise and changes, you are alive, you have a healthy functioning body, you have more resilience and courage than you probably give yourself credit for. So whatever it is that you're afraid of, you can probably, with a little grace, with a little help, with a little stability, with a
Yeah.
little space, you can probably face it.
Yeah, you can get through anything. You wouldn't
Yeah.
be given anything that you couldn't handle. And like I've realized too, like it's just like where you are in the story, and
Yes.
just like in like Lord of the Rings, and things seem really tough in the Two Towers, but Gandalf's coming, and
Yeah.
there's backup. You just have to like hold the line, because things are always darkest before the dawn. And I think so long as you kind of keep the flame alive and in yourself, like you know, find that joy and balance in yourself, you can really like you can ride the wave a bit more, instead of like like
Yeah. And I would say you're kind of already riding it, but you're probably like hanging off for dear life on the side of the boat. And really, it's just the difference of like just getting up, getting on top of your surfboard and like enjoying it a little bit more, right? Like if you're like holding on for dear life, it's probably far less enjoyable. But regardless, you are riding the wave. You're here with us. So
yeah,
wave is being ridden.
that
Um, just the nature of how you're doing it can have a little bit more grace
I
for
love it.
yourself.
Yeah, yeah, you deserve it.
Yeah,
Either way.
yeah. And like, we're proof. Like we both had very intense, insane weeks. I'm like, that's great.
No, it's true. It's true. And I think that there's a level of like people talk about like change, and me reading about Jean Grey and like phoenixing and all this kind of stuff. For people who aren't familiar, Jean Grey is like from the X-Men, but like that's all to say, just reimagining yourself, the character that you are playing in this life, the character you are playing for others as well. um if I think of like the Iliad and like Jason and the Argonauts, these are like big sagas, but in Jason and the Argonauts you had Odysseus playing like a supporting role, and Odysseus
Yeah,
is also a supporting role in the Iliad, but he also has the whole Odyssey for him. So while you have your main character story, you're also playing a very significant role in others as well. And so you you matter. That's it's like,
yeah.
even though sometimes it doesn't seem that
Others
way, you
matter to
truly
you.
matter in more ways than you probably think.
That is a beautiful place to end off. Thank you everyone for
Yes.
joining us. We
Thank you
would
so
love to
much.
hear from you. Please drop us a line. Our email is today's harmonics with an S at gmail.com. Tell us how you liked the episode. Tell us if there are certain themes or topics that you want us to wrestle and dance with and dive deep in with. And Rachel, shall we forecast next week?
Next week is
The
going to be,
cosplay.
yes, it's going to be Batgirl and Black Canary, I think,
It is.
right?
Okay,
Yes.
so we are so excited for this. So please join us next week on Friday, where we will be cosplaying as Barbara Gordon, Batgirl,
Yes.
and Dina Laura Lance, Black Canary.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be so good. And also, maybe we can coordinate a Gotham rave after.
That would be
Like a
fantastic.
live one. Because I have like Penguin, and I have a Joker, and I have a Catwoman on TikTok.
Oh
That,
wow! Okay, and
so
you have a Nightwing in the next room.
that's right. Who is my DJ? So like there, we can make this work.
You can totally make this work. All
Okay.
right, stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining us.